What's happening, everybody? Welcome into a brand new episode of Crossed Up. Anthony Sanfilippo is here. I'm Bob Wankel. And Anthony, we've had a little day off here, an unexpected day off after the Phillies take 2 out of 3 against the Kansas City Royals. And I want to go back to something that you said when we recorded on Friday. Said that if the Phillies lost the game to the Royals, that would be the game that we would fixate on, not the fact that they won the series. And I don't know if that's true or not. I'd like to kind of take your temperature on that here in a second, but it was a struggle to beat that Royals team. Like, we came out of that weekend, and I think that everyone feels pretty good. Trea Turner's fixed now because the fans were able to bring him back to life, and that's I know you probably want to talk about that at some point. But I mean, it was a struggle all weekend to win that series, and credit to them. The offense woke up finally against a bad Royals pitching staff, and there were some pretty good things I think that transpired. There were some bad things that transpired. So we definitely have a lot to talk about today. And before we move forward, kind of just maybe get some opening thoughts here where you're at after this weekend.
So I think that the loss gets masked by the entire Trea Turner thing. Like, when we last talked, we weren't expecting that, right? We weren't expecting that. Was a movement that had just was in its infant stages when we were recording on Friday, and then it just went bonkers that day. And then, of course, the standing ovations and all that. So in my mind, the loss Friday is still something that I think cannot be overlooked. You're supposed to beat the Kansas City Royals. They stink. Now, to their credit, I mean, they had won a bunch of games in a row coming into the series. They played a fun style of offense. I mean, they bunt, they run, they're fast. They're aggressive. They hit the ball. I mean, they hit all. Really, they hit every pitcher. At some point. Nola was terrible on Friday. Sanchez had his worst start since coming back. Gave up a bunch of hits. They pounded Walker early, and then Walker settled in, which we got to talk about him a little bit and what's happening with him. That's kind of a completely odd scenario. But so give the Royals a little bit of credit. I mean, for a team that's 40 games under 500 to be playing with that kind of aggressiveness. And I had a player tell me, he said, for the Royals, in a lot of ways, this is like one of those, they're only going to have a handful of series the rest of the season that you get up for. And one of them playing in front of sold out crowds, against the defending National League champions, is going to be one of those games. And I guess that's a telltale for them. It's like kind of something that they're looking forward to. So again, good credit to them. But part of me is like, you're making your life more difficult when you lose games the way you lose them against bad teams. And look, I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, that's going to come down to the last game of the season, because it's not. But it's one day longer now that you have to play meaningful baseball in the regular season than you would have if you just did your job on Friday.
So they don't win the game Friday. And we'll get to the Trea Turner stuff, and we'll get to the Bryce Harper pandering special, which we'll just get to all that, because I have a lot to say. And it's kind of a weird conversation. It feels like if you play it out on social media, it's like you're either staunchly against what happened this weekend and you think it was a travesty and an embarrassment and an affront to the city of Philadelphia and what this fan base is all about, and decades of, we're tougher and we expect more. And then there's this rah, this is the greatest thing of all time. And I actually hated it at first. And then as the weekend progressed, I think we're opposite on this. As the weekend went along, I think you became more agitated. And I was like, this is actually kind of cool. But I want to just get to the baseball stuff, because that conversation's been had on WIP now for 4 days. It's been written about. I almost feel like it's exhausted, so I don't want to lead with that. My biggest takeaway from this weekend, and I hate to be this guy because there were a lot of different issues. You mentioned Christopher Sanchez. He struggled. Taijuan Walker struggled. But I keep coming back to Aaron Nola, and I don't want Aaron Nola to dominate the conversation today, but I'm having a hard time with this because when you look at this and when you look ahead, it's about, okay, when you get into the playoffs, are you feeling good about Zach Wheeler? Are you feeling good about Aaron Nola? Because those two guys are going to give you a chance to win a short series. Well, we talked about Aaron Nola all season, and we've noted the positives. If you look beyond ERA, you look beyond the home runs, you see the batting average against is pretty good. The whip is still good. He pitches a lot of innings. Fangraphs likes him. He still has value in terms of WAR. Like, here's the thing. His last 5 starts, so he had that gem against the Rays on the 4th of July. In his 5 starts since then, he has a 5.64 ERA. And hey, right, he hasn't been helped by his defense. We all know that. Well, he also has a 4.92 fielding independent pitching. So like his FIP right now is 4.92. It's not good. So remove the shitty defense. He's still been pretty ineffective. Opponents are hitting 280 against him, which is pretty high. And they also have an 846 OPS against him. And in 30 innings, he's allowed 8 home runs. And you're sitting there and you might be saying to yourself, okay, great. Like you just rattled off a bunch of stats. He hasn't been good. I know that. I see that with my own eyes. But even more problematic when you take it a step further is here are the 5 teams that he's pitched against dating back to the July 9th, I believe it is, the day before the All-Star break. Miami, 27th in runs scored. Milwaukee, 23rd in runs scored. Cleveland, 26th. Pittsburgh, 24th. Kansas City, 29th. These are bottom feeder offenses, and he's getting his doors blown off right now. And you can be nuanced, and you can understand that he has value, and he's not a bum. He's not a number 5. He's not a choke artist. I think people get carried away, but this is a problem now. Like, you cannot objectively look at the season that Aaron Nola has put together, and especially over the last month plus now, and say, I feel really good about where he's at. I'm fully confident that down the stretch, he's just going to turn into the guy that he's been at times for this team, which is one of the better pitchers in baseball. He's a mess right now, and I don't know what to make of it.
Yeah, it's not been good. There's no doubt about it. It's really not been good. But do I think it's a problem? I don't, at least not yet.
How do you not like? I don't mean this like disrespectfully, but
no, and I'll explain.
A problem?
Well, I'll explain. So, it's interesting. I listened to the Dombrowski interview that he did yesterday. I think it was yesterday, might have been the day before, with Jason Stark and Doug Glanville, and they had him on for a good half hour, and he was going through all of this, and he makes a lot of sense with what he was saying. And it's that, and again, this is not any kind of defense against the way Nola's pitched, because he's pitched like shit. Okay, for 5 games, he's been terrible. There's no doubt about it. But I think that they recognized that their pitchers were kind of hitting a little bit of a wall. Most of them. Wheeler's he's found his way through a little bit, but the other ones, Suarez has struggled. Walker's can't throw 90 miles per hour until like the 3rd inning of a game, right? Nola's been so bad. So like they found that this has been an issue. So he addressed this, and he said that, that was why they wanted to get Lorenzen and get a 6th starting pitcher. He said, not because we're necessarily worried about these guys not being able to perform up to their level, but because it gives them an opportunity to get a little bit healthier. And that's kind of an interesting thing when you hear him say that, because the idea is that maybe they know why these guys are where they are, and that as if you give them more time here down the stretch to kind of stay healthier, only throw on a less regular basis, whatever the case might be, that come October, they'll be a lot fresher than maybe they were even a year ago. So that's the only reason why I'm not yet panicked about any pitcher, for that matter, in specific here to Nola. That said, there's so much wrong about what he's doing out there, and it's all, Bob, when there's runners on base. I mean, he keeps talking about it doesn't bother him when he gives up a solo homer, and I know fans get frustrated by that, but I kind of understand that, right? Every pitcher has mistakes that they make throughout a game. They're going to miss a spot, they're going to throw the wrong pitch, whatever the case might be. And because he's not a fireball or 98 mile per hour guy, he pays for that mistake more than anybody else. So I kind of, people are going to roll their eyes at it. But when he says the solo homers don't bother me, I understand why. But that's not even the issue. To me, it's that he really has been struggling with guys on base. And he has not figured out a way to kind of get himself set from a physical, mental perspective. Like he's a very rhythm pitcher. And he's figured out that rhythm for the windup, but he has not figured out that rhythm. It's been an all season long thing out of the stretch. And like that to me that's the red flag. And if that doesn't improve, regardless of the opponent, I mean, look, he's going to face a couple more bad teams coming up here, right? He's going to face Washington, right? He's going to get who the hell else are they playing coming up that's really bad? But the point being that he's going to face a couple more bad teams. So even if he gets right, let's just say in his next couple of starts, well, the narrative is going to be, well, he finally beat bad teams. Oh, he's beating bad teams. Okay, that's fine. But I think the idea is you need to see him get better over the course of the next 6 weeks. If he does, then I think we're okay come August. If not, then I think we can have a different conversation, towards the end of the season than we're having right now.
What is the likelihood, based on what has happened this year to this point, is he more likely to be here next year because he has not been that guy that has taken the possibility of a $200 million contract by the balls? Or is he a guy that, I think fans across the region here are saying, like, I don't think I want to go anywhere near this for another 5 or 6 years after what I've watched this season? Is it just possible that his career is just sort of taking a turn here?
No, Aaron Nola is going to get paid.
He is going to get paid.
Whether it's here or somewhere else, he's going to get paid. He's going to get a 5-year deal.
Is he going to get paid what he would have gotten paid if he were a free agent at the end of last season? Let me ask it to you like that.
He might get a little bit less.
Has he actually cost himself money this season?
Yeah, I mean, it's when you have a down year. I mean, yes, of course. And you have a down year going into your free agency year, it probably costs you a little bit of money. But I think that, like you said, when you look at the underlying numbers, I think that teams are looking at those. I mean, Dombrowski was talking about comparing players at the deadline, and the way he was describing it, and the way he was answering questions, because Stark was asking him about, not getting a left fielder, a right-hand hitting left fielder, and he was talking about what do they add, and he's talking about in terms of WAR. Like, do we really want to get a guy who's 0.5 WAR more than, what we, is that really going to help us? And it's like, okay, so teams are obviously thinking about that kind of stuff. So I think when you look at analytical numbers, you look at Aaron Nola and you look at the fact that he's a workhorse who doesn't get injured. Teams, he's going to get paid. Is he going to get $200 million? No. I thought that $200 million was probably, unless he went out and had a Cy Young season this year, was probably a ridiculous number to begin with, right? I kind of thought he was in that 175 range, at the beginning of the year. Does he go down to like 160? Can I see it be a 5-year, $160 million kind of deal for Nola? Yeah. Now the question is it here or is it somewhere else? And the answer to that is, I don't know, but I look at it and I think it's more likely to be here now than it maybe was earlier in the year, and primarily because, now Painter's out until 25, right? So you can't have your young prospect superstar come up. Wheeler's only got 1 more year left on his deal, right? So you're like, okay, now what? And so, where are you with your other prospects like Abel and McGarry? And really, if you're in the window to try and win championships, are you going to turn over your rotation to 2/3, 3/5 of it to 20, 21, 22-year-olds, right? I don't think so. So I think that the likelihood of him coming back is more likely now than it was earlier in the year. But I don't know. It's not a slam dunk by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah, I mean, these two questions sort of exist together right now in unison. It's, well, what Aaron Nola are we going to get down the stretch? And then, by the way, what's his value and what do you do with him beyond this year when the dust settles? And when you watch him from start to start, it's a lot of things. It's exhausting. It's frustrating. It's been exasperating in a lot of ways. And they really need him to get it figured out. And, if the solution here is that Michael Lorenzen comes in and buys them a little extra time and gets them healthier and he turns the corner here in mid-August and beyond, then I think then you can start to feel good about what this Phillies team might look like in October. My mind has just shifted 7 weeks from now. The Phillies can blow this. I said this last week. They could not make the postseason. It's possible. It's not outside the realm of possibility. But in my mind, they are in. Like, I just think that they are in for a lot of different reasons. I think that they're good enough. I think that their competition stinks. Every time you look up, you're like, okay, there go the Reds. Now they're going off the rails. The Brewers can't hit again. Like, you just go through the Padres. Like, everyone's like, here come the Padres. Well, then they get destroyed by the Dodgers this weekend. They're up 5-0 yesterday, trying to get a series split in not a must-win game, but a critically important game against LA. And then they give up an 8 spot in the 5th, and they lose 13-7. Like, that is not what a legitimate contender does in that spot. And so we watch the Phillies and we go, Aaron Nola. Now the rotation's not pitching as well, and the bullpen looks shorter, and they're losing games to teams that they should beat. Well, guess what? Like, the Pittsburgh Pirates last night beat the Atlanta Braves, who are now under 500 since the All-Star break. Like, if you just take a step back and you look at it league-wide, like, I just think that the Phillies slot in. But now everything is about October. It's not, hey, I need Aaron Nola to figure it out this week against the Nationals. It's I need him to figure it out 7 weeks from now. And
I think that that's their plan here. You know, it was interesting because we asked Rob Thompson yesterday before they banged the game. You know, what next week is going to look like. You know, because they have 2 off days next week. They have Monday and Thursday off. They got that weird 2 games in Toronto, and they have an off day on either side. And he didn't say specifically what was going to happen, but he did say, you know, we'll probably adjust our rotation at that time and give guys who need extra time off. And so that to me sounds like Aaron Nola is going to pitch Thursday against Washington. And then I think he's getting a week off. I don't think he pitches again until that Washington series the following weekend. It might not be till Saturday or Sunday. So he might get like 8-9 days off because they can, right? They can give him that time. And I think that their plan is, let's just be healthy in October. And the regular season numbers are not going to matter. We don't care what everybody's individual statistics are in the regular season. And we're going to go into the playoffs as a veteran team that knows how to win. And we're going to go with our guys. And our guys are going to be the ones that are going to have to get us there. And that's going to be their mentality. And that means that so like, you know, you hear people say Nola shouldn't start in the playoffs. He's going to start game 2 of a series. Wheeler's going to start game 1. Nola's going to start game 2.
Is there any world in which he's healthy and he does not?
No.
What if over the next, I don't know, 8 starts, he has numbers similar to the 5 that we've just seen, and then all of a sudden it's a 13-game stretch where he's pushing 5-6 ERA. I'm just serious. Like, it's not that crazy of a thought anymore. Like, do I expect, if I had to bet on what is to transpire here, I think that Aaron Nola probably goes through a stretch of 5 or 6 starts where he's really good and we feel good about it again, and then there's probably a blow up, and then we just get to October and we say, hope it works out. Like, I don't think anything's going to be decided. Like, I don't think that you're going to go in with a definitive feel of what Aaron Nola is going to be or how he's going to perform in October. But I do think that there's going to be ups again. Like, I don't think that we're just on a straight downward spiral here.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I think that they look at it and probably say, just like any position player who struggles for an extended period of time, Aaron Nola is in one of those stretches where he's just not pitching well. And it may end up being a terrible season for him, right? I mean, Cole Hamels had it in 2009, but Cole Hamels still pitched in the playoffs in 2009. They went to the World Series, right? I mean, so
he killed him when he was there. That game 3, it's Saturday night.
Yeah.
Oh,
so you know, even the teams are going to ride their guys. They're just going to do it. I mean, there's no
because you don't have any other.
Like, what's your
really
option?
Is not a plan B here. There's
not
another
option. You ride your guys. And then you worry about reassessing in the offseason, right? And the funny thing is it's interesting. I recommend to everybody, it's rare that you say on one podcast that you recommend somebody listens to another podcast. But since it's a national podcast that just happened to have an episode that ties into the Phillies, go back and listen to yesterday's Starkville. Dave Dombrowski, I'm telling you, Bob, in a way, he laid the gauntlet down for the Braves. He talked about how good they are, how they're way ahead. He said, we would be nuts to even think that we're going to catch them. He said, our goal right now is to get that first round home wild card. He says, and that scares me. He says that first round series, the 3-game series, scares me because it's such a toss up, right? He says, so we want it. You want to have it in your home ballpark, and we think that our home ballpark favors us as a team, and obviously our fans and stuff. He said, and then you look at the Braves, as good as they are. He says, they're a probable second round opponent, but we're built to beat a team like that in a 5-game series. And he says, so we look forward to that possibility. And so he basically was saying to the Braves, we're ready for you. Like, you're not going to scare us. The way you're having this great season, it don't matter to us. Come October, it's a different ballgame. And that's a mentality. And it's something about this team that allows me to, as frustrating as they are at times, and yes, they are very frustrating, but it's that mentality, it's that killer instinct. It was Schwarber telling us the other day that numbers don't matter to anybody. It's all about winning. All we care about is winning, and it doesn't matter who does it, when they do it, how they do it, as long as we win. And that kind of team focus, that's what makes me believe that this Phillies team is good enough to get back to the World Series. I won't predict them to get there, because I do still think Atlanta has done enough. When you look at what they do during the season, every time there's a big series against a team that's pushing or getting, that's hot, the Braves seem to like wipe the floor with them. I mean, other than the Cubs this past, which they lost 2 of 3 to the Cubs, but other than that one, but every other time that they played a team that you're like, big series, here you go against the Braves clean the floor with them. Yeah. And that's just what they do. So I ultimately think they have that mentality too, which means it will be a hell of a series. But at the same time, I understand it and I get it, and that's why I'm bullish on this team.
Well, I know you don't care about this stuff, but I will just put some numbers behind it. I don't know that we're getting out ahead of ourselves here, but Baseball Reference right now gives the Phillies an 83.1% chance to make the playoffs. Fangraphs right there with them, 82%. So this is certainly trending in a direction where the Phillies look like a probable playoff team. I want to ask you about one other starting pitcher in particular. And I think in a way you could go through and dissect each of these guys on an individual basis right now, because each one has their own special set of circumstances. And you think, like, is Zach Wheeler all the way back now? Is Ranger Suarez going to come out and scatter 10 hits over 6 innings again tonight? Or can he finally be a little bit more sharp than he's been for the last month? And can Lorenzen duplicate what he did his first time out? Like, all of these guys are pretty interesting right now. And I think each start is a kind of like an interesting study, really, to kind of assess where they're at and how they might stack up moving forward. But Taijuan Walker comes out on Sunday, and you're thinking to yourself, all right, good win last night. They came back, the Turner home run, like, you're feeling good about it. And Taijuan Walker comes out and gives up 5 hits in the first inning on Sunday. And, credit to him for hanging in there. He keeps his pitch count down after 2 tough innings. He gets through 7, and you applaud that. You say, wow, good job. He wins another start. He leads the National League in wins. There's a lot of good things you can say about him here. But, you also can't overlook the fact that he gave up 5 hits in the first inning, and the ball's getting sprayed all around the field. And more problematic than that is, just here you go. I mean, Michael Garcia comes up, leadoff batter. First pitch of the game, 88.5 miles per hour sinker. Second pitch of the game, an 84.2 miles per hour cutter. What is that? How do you start a game with your velocity down by 4 to 5 miles an hour? And granted, yes, he's shown signs and ability to kind of increase the velo as the game goes on, but that doesn't work over time. You cannot say, hey, Taijuan Walker, here's a baseball in a game 4 of a playoff series, and he comes out throwing 86 miles an hour, and the Phillies are now 3-0 in the first inning.
Yeah, and it's interesting, Bob. They don't seem to have answers. Although the one thing that I thought was interesting that Thompson said after that start was, he said I don't know, maybe it's a little bit of a dead arm issue. And that happens, right? I mean, that happens to pitchers where they have that thing. And then I asked Walker after the game. I said, "Can you physically feel the difference from the first inning to the fourth inning in your arm?" And he said, and he gave me an answer. He's like, "Yeah." He's like, he's like, that first inning. He's like, I don't necessarily. It doesn't feel like I have what I need to have. And then by the fourth inning, fourth inning, I feel great. And so it makes you wonder, like, how about changing up the pregame routine? Or here's another option. I know you don't ever want your pitchers throwing too many pitches, right? Before they actually go out there and start. But maybe Taijuan Walker doesn't have to throw 7 or 8 innings in a game. Maybe Taijuan Walker only has to, you have a good enough bullpen. Maybe you only need him to throw 5 or 6. So make him warm up a little bit harder earlier, so that in the first inning he's got that 93, 94, on life on his fastball that the freaking Kansas City Royals aren't smacking all over the ball yard. Right? I mean, that's what it was. It was like T-ball that first inning. I couldn't write down the keep score fast enough. They were just going up there like first pitch, like bang, bang, bang. I couldn't believe it. I was like, what the hell's going on here? Yeah. Like, that was unreal. And the same thing had happened to him. I think it was Miami was the last time he had started, right? And the same thing happened there, where first inning he was below 90, and then all of a sudden he found it again. So to me, it seems like a routine issue, not necessarily that the player can't do what you want him to do. They call it dead arm. Okay, maybe it takes him just a little longer to get loose.
Yeah, it's pretty remarkable when you dive into the numbers. And I tweeted this out the other day and sent it to you actually towards the end of the game Sunday. But First inning this season, 6.75 ERA.
Yeah.
And all other innings, a 3.46 ERA. 17 of the 56 earned runs that he's allowed this season have come in the first inning. And just to even take this a step further, like, you look at it, opponents this season are hitting .301 against him with an .866 OPS in the first inning. The second best batting average that opponents have against him in any single inning beyond that is .261, and that comes in the 7th inning, and that's with a .607 OPS. Like, it's the total inverse of what you would expect. As a game goes along and you see a lineup the second, the third time, the offense is supposed to become more effective against you, and he really has all season gotten stronger as the game goes on. And when you look at what happened Sunday, I would say, well, who cares? He had a bad first inning and he settled down. Nice job. Let's move on. But it is that game is a microcosm of what has happened to him essentially all year. And there's a ton of value in a guy giving you 7 innings and keeping a team off the board for the final 6 of them. But again, if this is about October and this is about a playoff series, there's nothing worse than blinking and looking up at the scoreboard. He's given up 4 hits. There's 3 runs across, and there's still 2 guys on base with 1 out in the inning. And you go, what are we going to do here?
Yeah. So here's my interesting question on this, because I'm glad you brought up October. So we already established that, barring a complete and total meltdown by Nola the rest of the season, that Zach Wheeler, Aaron Nola are going to start games 1 and 2 of a series, right? Let's imagine in that first round wild card series, you need all 3 games. Who's throwing game 3?
Well, my guess right now is Ranger Suarez, but as I noted last week, there's has to be at least some consideration to the thought that you're going to turn him into that jack of all trades type guy. Now, Ranger Suarez did start games last year for them in October.
Correct.
And he did against Atlanta. And it's not like he was just in that bullpen role the entire duration of the postseason. But right now, because if it's a deciding game 3, I'm probably going with the guy that's pitched in big spots, the slow heartbeat that they like to talk about. Like, it just makes the most sense. But like, if Lorenzen came out and shoved for the next 2 months, you'd say, okay, well, this guy's been one of the better pitchers in baseball now for a 2.5 month run. Do you maybe give him the ball? I don't know. I think that there's probably at least a consideration there.
Yeah. So the question,
probably not Taijuan Walker for me, who might win 18 games this season.
I know that's what I was trying to get to, is because you have a guy on your team who's got a shot to win 18 games. I don't think he's going to. I mean, he would have to win every remaining start to get to 20, right? I don't think that's going to happen. But he could win 18 games for you and not pitch in the first first round. And does that make him? And then you say to yourself, well, is there value to having him on that roster in the first round? Because he's terrible in the first inning, right? Is he a guy you want to bring out of the bullpen?
Well, unless they do exactly what you just said, and he throws 3 innings worth in the bullpen, and then he comes out in the 6th. You know,
unless you want to do a right-left piggyback in Game 3 with him and Suarez, like who knows? I mean, it's an interesting situation for the Phillies. I mean, I think once you have a round where you need a 4th pitcher, he's going to pitch. He's going to be the guy because they really do like the notion of having Lorenzen as a multifaceted weapon in the way that they use Suarez as a multifaceted weapon. But I think you're right, Bob. I think that it's a situation that's a little bit fluid right now.
All right, so I want to get off of this real quick and kind of turn it over to. And I want to talk about Castellanos. I want to hit on Schwarber too, but we do need to talk about the vibes, right? And everything that happened down there this weekend. And you wrote about it on Saturday morning about how that kind of did mask what had transpired in the game, some of the issues that we saw on Friday night. But I'll just tell you where I'm coming from on this. And like Jack and I, like I'm very friendly with Jack. I like Jack a lot. He comes out and kind of spearheads this, let's applaud for Trea Turner thing. And I don't know if he was actually the one that came up with it, but he was obviously behind it. And
he had the biggest voice.
Yeah. It gained some steam too.
Yeah.
And so then we spend all day Friday. Should we do this? Should we not? People are arguing on the radio about it. And I think there was a consideration of, would this be patronizing? Would this almost be offensive to the player? And listen, after the game, Trea Turner said all the right things, seemed to be receptive to it. The fans kept it up going into Saturday night. He hits a massive home run that really helps the Phillies win that game and probably avoid one of their more embarrassing losses of the season. It's a big moment. Everyone's going crazy. Everyone's having fun with it. And when this thing first came up, I kind of said to myself, like, this feels lame to me. And that's probably because I'm getting cranky. And in my defense, I just spent the last 2 weeks with kidney stones. And then yesterday I had a tooth extraction and I couldn't talk and I'm bleeding and I've been in a lot of pain for the last 3 weeks. So I don't know if it's just that I'm getting old and cranky. I don't know if it's because I haven't felt good, but I was like, this is stupid. Are these people serious? This guy's hitting 235. He's making $30 million a year. Like I took that side of it initially. And then I watched it play out and I was kind of like, I don't know. Is this why Trea Turner hit the home run? No, I don't think so at all. And he was 4 for 12 against a bad Royals team. And let's see what happens the next few weeks. But in the moment, I just thought, what the hell? Why not? Fans are having fun out there. He hits the home run. He said the right things after the game. And everyone sort of had fun with it. Now, of course, this city fans, they love to be told that they're good fans. They want to be part of the story. And I think that they often are. And I think often are in a favorable way. I do think that the fans had an impact on what happened with this team last postseason. Certainly the players had to do it. Bryce Harper has to hit the home run in Game 5 against the Padres. Kyle Schwarber has to hit a bunch of key home runs. Rhys Hoskins has to hit a bunch of key home runs. Zach Eflin and Ranger Suarez have to get outs late in games. If the players did it, but as an ancillary part of the story, the fans were a factor. So I thought it was kind of fun, but now I'm just ready to sort of turn the page and see what happens. I'm going to be down there for both games tonight. You're working. I'm going in with a couple friends and I'm going to have a bunch of beers. And I hope that we're not cheering every time he comes to the plate. To me, it was fun. It was a cool moment. I was surprised about the way I felt. I thought it was cooler than I thought it was going to be. But can we just move on now? I think that's where I'm at.
Yeah, it was a little bit of a perfect storm, right? Because what happens if he doesn't hit the home run? Do we all think it's cool at that point?
I don't know. Does he still have 3 or 4 hits this weekend and comes back from the dead to?
I mean, if he went 1 for 4 in each game, right, and with single, double, let's say, right? Yeah, he had the one single on, I guess it was Friday night that drove in a run. Okay, great. But if he went, let's say he doesn't hit the home run. The home run is the difference, right? I mean, that's the
the
thing.
moment. That's what
right.
creates.
But if he doesn't hit the home run, do we all think it's still cool? Or are we sitting there? Are we sitting back saying, that was just kind of a stupid thing that we did?
But he did, like, and I know that the result is not necessarily correlated to the process. Like, like Kyle Pagan Saturday night, like, is trolling Fritz and does like I forget what beer he was drinking, Blue Moon or something for Trey, and he says, because some fat ass stood up and cheered that all of a sudden Trea Turner's going to hit home runs. But like, I sort of disagree with that. Like, who cares that he hit the home run or didn't hit the home run? Like, people just had fun with it. Like, it was there. What was the downside, I guess? And that's where I ultimately land.
Well,
like,
I'll tell you
like, I don't know.
The downside was, and it turns out it didn't have to go to that point, but the downside was you do this and he doesn't respond, then the negative reaction towards him becomes more visceral moving forward.
Yeah, I guess.
I think the fans turn on him before. We had your back, Trey, and you still suck. We're done with you.
Do we really think that the fans, like, are the fans that stupid that they think that cheering for a night or two and not seeing the results is okay? Now I'm gonna boo this guy because he didn't make my ovation pay off. Like, I don't know.
You're putting me in a bad spot. Do I think do I think that all fans are that way? That stupid? No, I don't. I don't think all fans. I like to think that the people who listen to this podcast are not of that ilk. Okay, but are there fans out there? What I call the lowest common denominator fans, right? Are those fans out there, and they are big time sports radio listeners? Okay, are those fans out there and feel that way? Yes, there are. There was a guy sitting in front of the press, but not that this has anything to do with anything, but this is an example of what I'm talking about. There was a guy sitting in front of us in the press box at 200 level, and he was getting more hammered as the game went along, but kept screaming his head off at Bryce Harper every time he came up, at how much he sucks, how terrible he is, and he's in a Phillies uniform, a Philly shirt, right? He's wearing he's all Phillies geared up, and he's cheering for every other player, but has this absolute hatred for Bryce Harper. The guy's a moron, okay? But the fact of the matter is that he's not alone in this world. Okay? There are other people like him. So to answer your question, yes, there are people who feel that way. And I actually had a conversation with Jack about this, and I gave him a lot of kudos because I said, listen, the coolest thing about this is that what you did is you made fans feel like they were part of something that is a Philadelphia sports story that they could talk about forever. I said, so you gambled a little bit because if it didn't work, you'd have egg on your face, right? But it ended up being a perfect storm for the weekend. And if Turner goes fourth and has, a good 2 months here, and he's the Trea Turner everybody thought you were going to get, this will be remembered forever in Philadelphia sports lore as, what fixed Trea Turner, the fans giving him standing ovations. So all that stuff is legitimate in the sense of where the fans fit in the grand scheme of Philadelphia sports. But the reality is it was so contrived that it happened every at bat for 3 days. It was like, all right, enough. You wanted to do it the first at bat, okay, fine. You want to do it until he gets a hit, okay, fine. I mean, it was but all right, he got the hit. Now the next day, let's do it all again.
That's my hope. Like, listen, I hear that. Like, it's compounding. You're like, all right, this is his 11th at bat now. That's kind of where I'm like, okay, now we've had a day off. We did it. The fans fixed Trey.
Yeah.
Can we just put it in the past now? Like, I just hope that we're not doing this all week. Like, and maybe someone's listening to this and saying, like, come on, man. Like, we're going to do this every bat for the remainder of the year. Like,
and the other thing that drives me nuts.
I'm not going to tell fans what they should or shouldn't do down there, but
the other conversation,
let's just leave this in the rear view.
Yeah, the other conversation about this all that drives me nuts is that when people suggest, well, why don't we do this for Schwarber? And it's like, he's
Nola.
He's been here. Or Nola, we ain't going to go to Nola either. No, these guys, they've been here. Trey's new. He needs to understand what we're about. And it's like, please, please, people. And then the whole thing about, oh my God, the players loved it. They thought it was fantastic. Didn't you hear everything that they said? What were they going to say against it?
Yeah.
Like, you
We did not.
honestly think they were going to say, yeah, it was kind of corny? Like, nobody's going to say that.
There was like on Friday night, and when Turner hits the home run, certainly the players are just happy for what happened to Trea Turner.
Yeah.
But like, you could see some of the players having some fun with it. Like,
sure, they're going to, but that's what they would have done that even if that didn't exist, right?
yeah, sure.
I mean, that's how they are. That's how this group is. So like that, like to me, it's like we took it way too far. That's all I think. So anyway,
All right. So you didn't hate it in its entirety, but you know,
I was not on the pagan level. I just thought it went.
I said to Peg, and I said, "Yo, man," I said, you gotta let it breathe. I said, you're just on the wrong side right now. Like,
Yeah.
it doesn't matter if you're on the right side. Like, the current, the force of this is against you. Just let it go. Take the L.
Yeah, I would no, but I still am. I'm closer to pagan than I am to Jack.
Okay.
So if you want, I'm more towards the middle, but probably like slightly to pagan side.
Yeah, well, I'm in the car on Sunday afternoon, and I'm listening to the post game show, and Bryce Harper gets on with Scott in LA, and he goes on this 4-minute just gushing monologue about his admiration for the fan base, and I just said, okay, like I'm listening to it, and I'm like, this is a post on Crossing Broad. But then he says, I wish I started my career here. And I said, oh yeah. I said, this is perfect. So, you open up Twitter and let's see, how did I do this? Bryce Harper on the post-game radio broadcast talking about the fans. I wish I started my career here. And this thing has this morning 2 million impressions on Twitter. Right. It has 7,200 likes. And let's see here, 890 retweets. This thing went nuts. And then obviously all the people that clip audio, they put it up, and it went crazy online because it does two things. First of all, it lets Phillies fans feel like, see, this is one of the best athletes in the country. He loves us. And you feel great about it. And then also it gains a lot of steam because then all the people down there in Washington are going, yo, what the fuck? We loved you. We loved you here. And then you left. And even if you should have left, and we understand why you left, like, why are you doing us like that? And then you get the people chiming in like, oh yeah, well, you don't have a ring. You'll never have a ring. We have a ring. Yeah. It's like that whole thing was just going on. Like, I knew that was going to strike a chord on multiple levels.
And let me add one other layer, an element to this, because I'll be honest with you, being around this team, and I think you know this as well, Bryce Harper never says anything that isn't calculated.
Absolutely.
Okay. So that this is something that he was going to say, that he knew he was going to say.
I think Bryce Harper put 300 words in front of that part of the quote just to dilute it a little bit.
Yes.
But
right.
I mean,
he's going to just
when he
sneak
said
that in there.
Well, that wasn't by accident,
and, and oh, by the way, we have 4 games with the Nationals.
Yeah, so watching the Nationals this week.
So yes, very, very well orchestrated by Bryce Harper, who knows how to pander to an audience better than almost any athlete that's come through this city in a long, long time. Absolutely.
But I will say, I think that there's some, what's the word I'm looking for? In like real estate, they call it puffing, like, over exaggerating.
Yeah.
But I think that there is a sense from him that, like, yeah, this crowd, especially the last year, dating back to last October, knowing what it can be, like, this crowd's pretty awesome. Like, these people are crazy. I love play. I think Bryce Harper loves playing for these fans. I do. But does he sort of dress it up a little bit to the point of like, all right, man. Yeah, he does.
I agree. I think Harper is, we know how uber competitive he is. And I think that, we know from the past how interactions with the fans have fueled him. Like, when guys chirp him and then he hits a home run and he comes back and he starts chirping back at the fans, right? Like, we've seen that before in different cities, not necessarily even here. Like, he's had people chirp him in Philly that he's chirped back at, right? I mean, so like, he's fueled by that for sure. Yeah, and so I do think that it's not like he's making this up. There's certainly an element of truth to it. It's legit. But like I said, the words that he chose were chosen very specifically for that moment. Yes.
All right, I have to jet out of here actually, but I can do a one last thing here before we wrap it up.
I'm just gonna say 4 words for one last thing.
Okay.
Fight night in Cleveland.
Down goes Anderson. Down goes Anderson. One of the best radio calls I've ever heard.
Unreal.
And like the way he flips the switch, and I know it's been said, but you just can't help but not focus on it. It's like he's this baseball announcer, and all of a sudden it's like boom, he's Howard Cosell, like instantaneously.
Yes.
It was awesome.
It was unbelievable. One of my favorite things too that I think didn't get enough play was, you know how they have MLB has like the game day thing where you actually, it's like that computerized image of the players running around, like what happens, and then all of a sudden you have all these little computer players like gathering at second base, like what is going on
at
here?
second base? Yeah, yeah. I'll tell you what, and it was like a real throwback. Like I feel like in a way, like I was almost expecting like what's the reaction to this going to be, and like I was wondering if people are going to be like, "There's just no place for that in today's game," or like you hate to see this, and everyone was like, "That was awesome." Like Terry Francona's like, "Hey, you gotta let him figure it out," and
yeah.
You have the announcer, down goes Anderson. People are like online going crazy about it. I will say, like, 2 different things here real quick. One, the White Sox are a mess, and like Tim Anderson is having a hell of a year and not in a good way. And there's been all these reports about friction in that locker room and stuff. But I just thought it was I thought it was like really funny the way that everyone sort of handled it. Like just kind of like, that was good. It was baseball.
Yeah, well, I mean, the whole, and we'll talk about this next time. We Kenyon Middleton talking about just how there's no rules and players are sleeping the bullpen, missing meetings, like things like that. It's a mess in Chicago. But the best part of this whole thing is Ramirez clocks Anderson, and he goes down after getting it across the chops. Anderson gets twice as many game suspension. That's Ramirez.
That's 3. Yeah. It's like once you get into the fight, if you're gonna get into the fight and you win, like there should be a prize for that.
That was his prize.
There you go. All right, well, that'll do it for the latest episode of Crossed Up. You can follow us on Twitter. Show account is @UpPhillies. You can follow Anthony online. He'll be down there. Are you doing all 10 on this homestand, or are you going to send me down there for a day?
I was going to talk to you about this, but you got to go to a meeting. So
we'll talk about that later this afternoon. You can follow him on Twitter at @SanPhilly. You follow me at Bob_Wankel, and we will talk to you on Friday.